Let's talk about the second house and the 12th house and how to interpret combinations between the two. The first thing that we'll do is discuss each house separately, and then once we're clear on what each house represents, then we'll be well equipped to easily understand how to interpret their combinations. Now, you're probably asking, how do houses combine? Houses just stand still. So to explain that real quick, there's two ways. One is kind of well-known and one is a little less well-known. The well-known way is that every house has a lord and the lord moves around. Whatever planet owns the sign that creates the house is the lord of that house. And that planet can go anywhere. So for example, you could have the second lord in the 12th house, or the 12th lord in the second house, or you could have the second and 12th lords joining somewhere or mutually aspecting each other, and that would get you combinations between the second and 12th house. The less well-known way that houses can combine is by being in order in terms of how prominent or dominant they are in a chart. In order to understand the order of the house dominances in your chart, you need to either be a very good astrologer to calculate it, or you need to go to my website, victorcara.com, and look for the report called The Houses of Life. The shortcut to it is just victorcara.com/H. And if you order that report, you'll get all of your houses evaluated. And there'll be a section that gives you the DNA code, the simple code of prominence. You can use that in conjunction with these videos to understand things pretty clearly. Now, let's dive in and let's do it. Let's talk about what the second house represents first. So first of all, what is the second house? As you can see in the diagram, it is the sign which is below the eastern horizon. So it's the area of sky that is below the east, and therefore its basic symbolism is that it supports the east. Therefore, it has two main strands of meaning. Since the east is the place where the sun rises and the day begins, the east represents beginnings and visibility. And so since the second supports that, everything about the second house is pro-beginning and pro-visibility or pro-manifestation. So now let's give some specifics to these basic abstract meanings of the second house. The most essential thing to understand about the second house is that it's all about the foundation. Just like when you make a building, the first thing you do before you actually build the building itself is you make the foundation. So it's supporting or pro-beginning. And just like the foundation of a building hugely influences the structural integrity or stability of the building, similarly, the second house has a huge impact on the stability, the general basic overall overarching stability that we have in life, how steady we are at things, how regular and reliable we are. Now, there's three important permutations of the concept of foundations. The first one is family. So the person who was born is represented by the chart, and the second house represents where they come from, their foundation, their family. So everybody in life, both the blood relatives that gave you birth literally, and also the people who provide stability and support to you and who give you strength and have your back, that type of friendly, family, supportive person is signified by the second house. Another permutation of foundations is wealth, or in other words, your financial status. So the money that you basically always have, it replenishes itself to this certain level, and that you use to basically pay your daily and monthly needs. That's the foundational wealth signified by the second house. And finally, health is also an important foundation. Health is really the wealth for the body. So it's the basic bank account that the body draws from to get its energy to do things. And so the second house has a lot to do with health, and therefore also has a lot to do with diet and nutrition. Now we can look at the things represented by the second house on the concept of it being pro-visibility. Visibility means you can see something. Seeing something means you can know it. So the second house is a house of knowledge. It's a house where things are not confusing. Things are becoming clear. Things are becoming known and understood. And it is a house of real things. Things which are visible means things that are real, things you can see, things you can touch, things that are tangible and practical. Here you have basically everything that you ever need to know about the second house. Now we need to understand the 12th house. So let's do that now. What is the 12th house? It's the sign which is above the eastern horizon, as you can see in the diagram. So it's the place, it's the area of the sky, not of the rocks and ground that support the east, but of the wind and the rain that erodes the east. So it's going to be basically the mirror image of the second house. Literally, it is the mirror of the second house. So instead of being pro-beginning, it's anti-beginning. Instead of being pro-visibility, it's anti-visibility. So let's talk about some specifics. Anti-beginning basically means subtracting. Things come into being, but the 12th house erodes them. So it's subtractive, it's reductive, it's minimizing. Hence, this also gives you, by inference, a little bit more information about the second house, which is the opposite. The second house is wealthy and healthy, so it's increasing and supportive. The 12th house is decreasing and subtractive. Now we can pull that out further to get some more specific images and words to help us understand the second house. Subtracting means losing. So this 12th house is the house of loss. Losing means you spent something. Spending means it's gone, you gave it. So here is the mirror image of wealth from the second house. The 12th house is not wealth, but it's loss or expense. Another permutation of subtraction is drain. The tank is getting less full. The car has less energy. So the body is going to become fatigued. It's going to come towards death or expiration by being drained of its vitality. So here you see the 12th house is the mirror image of the second's health. And one more very important permutation of subtraction is the agents of subtraction, the detractors, the subtractors in our life, the kind of people who are detracting from our success and our fame or our pride or our happiness. That's the opposite or the mirror image of the second house, which has all of your supporters. So second is supporters, 12th is detractors, second is wealth, 12th is expense, second is health, 12th is fatigue. Now over here on the anti-visibility section, it's going to have also mirrors of the second house, but two other interesting things that will also give us a little insight about the second house. Anti-visibility, it basically means things that you can't see. And so the 12th house, therefore, is a non-tangible place or a non-material place. And this is why it is a spiritually inclined place. Spiritually meaning things which are not immediately obvious or things which are not superficial or on the surface. Another way to say not visible means not real. And hence the 12th is also the house of unreality, mirroring how the second house is a very practical, realistic place. The 12th house is not a very realistic place. It's very into dreams. It's very into fantasies and daydreaming and coming up with ideas without really caring about the practicality of it. And anti-visibility also means things that you cannot know. So it has to do with unknown things or things which are outside of your vision. So unknown things also means things from a different country, things that you have not seen before. So the 12th house is a foreigner's place, or it's a place of things which feel alien to us. And this contrasts directly with how the second house is a place of knowledge, knowable and known things. And one more interesting thing about the 12th house that's very important. Anti-visibility also means not being in the spotlight. And that shows you something also about the second house, is that it's pro-pride, really. It imparts pride or confidence because it's pro-visibility. So it gives you the ability to go into a spotlight and be visible. The 12th house is the opposite to that. So it doesn't make a person inclined to be seen. It makes them inclined to remain unseen. And hence it's a house of humility. And you'll also find it associated with places where you are not seen. So in other words, places where you'll be sequestered or put away from the vision of others. A prison, even like a studio or a university where you'll go to study and you'll separate yourself from the rest of the world for some time. A hospital, things like that. An ashram. All right, so now we know basically everything we need to know about the second and the 12th houses. Now we're equipped to have an intelligent conversation about how to interpret combinations between the second and 12th lords or houses. So let's do that now. So the way that we interpret combinations of things is always the same. We always follow the same technique. We look for similarity between the two things that are combining. And where the two things combining are dealing with one issue, that will become important when they combine. And they deal with it in a same way or in a different way. So you're going to find a lot of different ways of dealing with the same thing here when you're comparing the second and the 12 houses. So first of all, the second house is the house of realism and the 12th house is the house of unrealism. So what is this going to mean? How are we going to interpret this dissonance or clash in the meaning of these two combining factors? Well, one really interesting and unique thing about the second and the 12th houses is that the directionality of their combination is more important than in almost any other pair of combinations of houses. By directionality, I mean basically, does the second lord go to the 12th house or does the 12th lord come to the second? Which direction is the movement going when they combine? If they're conjoining or mutually aspecting, which one is more dominant? If they're in sequence in a house code, which one comes first? Second lord going to the 12th is basically the same as 12th house coming first in a sequence and second being next. Because it means the second is going to function within the context of the 12th if you have 12 and 2 in a code, in that order. And that's the same thing that happens if you put second lord into the 12th house. It means the second lord is going to function in the 12th house. Okay, let's look at this then. Real and unreal. Well, if the second lord goes to the 12th house, you're taking the lord of realness and putting it in a place of unrealness. So the interpretation is impracticality, unrealistic person. But if you go from the 12th and you put that lord into the second, you get the opposite. You're taking the lord of impracticality and practicalizing it. You're taking, right? So you're going to get a practical person, a realistic person. Another important thing about second and 12th houses, we mentioned the 12th was the house of unknown and the second is the house of known. So how does this work? Again, it's extremely dependent on the direction. If the second lord or the known is going into the 12th of the unknown, then it implies a person who's not knowing much. They're not getting good information. So it means either they're uninformed or undereducated or they're unperceptive. They're missing things. They're not noticing things. If it goes the other way and the 12th lord comes to the second house, then you have the opposite thing. You have the lord of unknown going into the place of known. And so it's going to get information. So you have an informed person and a perceptive person when 12 comes to 2 or when 2 is supported by 12. Another important thing about second and 12th house is that the second house is the house of wealth and the 12th house is the house of expense or loss. So that's another example of dissonance. They're talking about one thing, money, but they're talking about it in opposite ways. One is saying wealth and the other is saying spend. So if 2 is going to 12, this symbolizes the exhaustion of finance because the Lord of Wealth has gone to the place of spending. And so you'll get a side effect here of the person feeling like they don't have enough and that other people have more than they have, and the side effect is often that they feel jealous about other people. So actually, second lord into the 12th house tends to push us towards being jealous or envious. Whereas if you take the 12th Lord and bring it into the second, then what you're getting is your expenses are going into the place of wealth. So you're getting good expenses or responsible expenses. They spend money on their family. They spend money on things which are solid and stable. So they get ROI, return on investment. So they get wealthy. So it's very temperamental. 12th and second houses are more temperamental in their combination than any other houses, I believe. It's completely opposite depending on which direction they go. So if you have a lot of money, then you don't feel envious. And it's pretty easy for you to be a good person and give people. So the side effect of 12 coming to 2, or 2 being supported by 12, is that the person is pretty virtuous, pretty generous, pretty charitable. They like to support people. They like to give their time, money, and energy to supporting people. Another thing about the second and 12th house. The second is the house of family or supporters, and the 12th is the house of detractors or non-family, right? Unknown people like foreigners. So this connection can go either from family to detractors or from family to unknown people. Either way, you get the same result out of it. If it's second Lord going to 12th, then it signifies not being well supported. Your supporters are going into a place for detractors, or your family is going into a place for foreigners. So it signifies the loss of those types of personalities. And the side effect of losing support figures is that you yourself don't become well suited for supporting others. The necessity to support others seems like something unusual or unconventional or over and above the call of duty, because you haven't experienced that it actually just is duty itself. And so you feel very burdened by the need to support other people, and you try to escape from that burden. That's the side effect of 2 going to 12. Whereas if it's the other way and 12 comes to 2, then you have detractors coming towards family, and you have foreigners coming towards friends. So what you get from that is an ability to befriend and partner with a lot of people, not just the people from your family. This type of person, the side effect is they have a tendency to disarm the enemy or de-enemize the enemy. Finally, the second is the house of health, and the 12th is the house of fatigue or ill health. So if the second Lord goes to 12, then it's the Lord of health going into an environment of sickness or exhaust. Specifically, the sickness is fatigue in the 12th house, lack of energy, feeling like you already spent your energy. So this person with 2 going to 12, or 12 supported by 2, they're the type that easily gets tired. So they have to be careful to pace themselves, sleep enough, get good nutrition, because they easily lose their energy. Whereas if it's the other way around, 12th Lord coming to the second house, or the 12th house being supported by the second house, then what you have is the exhaustion or the expense of energy is coming into the place of health and stability. So your efforts are well spent. They kind of regenerate themselves. Your energy gets regenerated. So here what you have is a person with steady endurance, a lot of endurance. They don't tire easily. So that was enjoyable, I hope. Informative and also kind of amazing. What's really amazing about it for me is how far you can go, how much information you can get from being basic, just being very basic and trying to understand the basics very clearly. What's the second house? What's the 12th house? Just using one simple principle of looking for the obvious similarities and checking if they're dissonant or harmonious. Just using that basic information, we get all of this. So hopefully you understand the second house a lot better and the 12th house a lot better, and you understand astrology in general and how combinations of things work, as well as the specifics. Maybe you have the second lord in the 12th house or whatever. If you want to know your specific house prominence sequence, once again, please go to my site, victorcara.com, and look for the report called The Houses of Life, which you can also get by going straight to victorcara.com/H. And if you order that report, you'll get that explained. The sequence will be shown. Thank you so much. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you for the third house series. The next video in this series will be third house, combining with the fourth, with the fifth, with the sixth, etc. Thank you.